Now to be joined by Courtney Reissig. Courtney is a wife, mother, writer, and speaker. Courtney just published a new book, Teach Me to Feel, working through the Psalms, thinking about how God directs our emotions in that way. And we've heard now from the Psalms twice just in this keynote presentation, and obviously such an encouragement, kind of a cornerstone passage in Psalm 139, but really eager to talk to Courtney more about that. She serves also as an advisory board member for Speak for the Unborn. Courtney, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wow. So just a brief word of update. I'm told that you had surgery for cancer in April. Would you mind just updating us on your health and your family?
Yeah, I did. I was really unexpectedly diagnosed with cervical cancer in April, and I had surgery, and the initial pathology before the surgery showed that it could have been invasive, and by God's grace it wasn't. And so the surgery was able to get it all. So I go back every 6 months for checkups to make sure that it doesn't come back. And so I go in 2 months for my first checkup. So those 6-month increments come really quickly. So, but I'm feeling great. So I actually never felt like I had cancer, which is the scary thing about cancer. Sometimes you don't feel like you have it. So it was just a routine test, caught it unexpectedly, and we're really thankful because it was a really crazy time to get cancer. So there's always never a good time, but COVID's not a great time to get cancer. So
no, especially with so many routine things being postponed or canceled, just praising the Lord for that special provision.
Yeah. They that was when nobody was allowed to operate or do anything, but they make provisions. That was not something that was considered essential. I mean, not essential. So, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Elective,
we're learning a whole new dictionary in the past 6 months.
Right. Like, who was using social distancing, like, in their terminology, like a few months ago. So,
yeah. Wow.
But thanks for asking. I feel really good. So,
okay, great. Yeah, we'll continue to pray as more check-ins happen. And thank you so much for just updating the S4U network and those who are joining us just to hear more about what the Lord is doing. I asked just really briefly about your family. How have your personal experiences with your family sharpened your view of pro-life ministry and the sanctity of life?
Yeah, so I'm a mom of 4 sons, and so I have twins who are 7, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and all of my pregnancies have carried with it some degree of complication. And so and then we've had miscarriages, and we've had periods of infertility. And so the challenges to getting pregnant really shaped kind of my appreciation for pregnancy, because it didn't come easily to us. And then with having miscarriages and losses, we were able to see tangibly that we were grieving a life that was lost. And so I think anyone who has a miscarriage, even if they wouldn't call themselves pro-life, feels the weight of that. And so it really shaped us in that regard. And then 3 of our 4 children have been born prematurely. Our twins were born a little over 8 weeks premature. And so they were in the NICU for 5 weeks. And so in the NICU, we saw babies that were born at like 22 weeks. I mean, I basically lived in the NICU for 5 weeks, and I saw babies that were 22 weeks and born at 23 weeks. And I saw with my own eyes what they look like. And so it was no longer on an ultrasound machine. It was, they look like human beings because they are human beings. And so it really helped solidify. I was already pro-life before, but it really helped solidify in my mind. We worked so hard to save these babies, and we worked so hard to save babies when you're in the womb. My pregnancies had a variety of complications that made us do things in order to make the babies live. And it just really helped me. It just solidified my conviction that this matters, that life matters. Life is at conception. And I've read a lot of stuff on premature infants and like babies born early. And there was a memoir of a reporter who wrote about her daughter being born at like 23 weeks or something. And it's just a threshold of viability. And so doctors sometimes can determine how they want to move forward with whether or not they're going to resuscitate and things like that. But they did resuscitate, and her baby's alive and in elementary school now. But she was pro-choice and she is still pro-choice, but it was an interesting take on how much it made her wrestle with her conviction of being able to abort a baby up until term, but then giving birth to a baby that was very, very far from term, and then doing everything she could to make sure this baby lived. So it was just a really, I think when you live those experiences, it takes what you believe in theory and kind of puts it into practice, because you actually see it with your own eyes.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's just, yeah, amazing to hear how the Lord has provided there, and not just making things smooth for you, but doing it in a way that better reveals his glory and encourages you in this ministry. So very grateful for his provision. You wrote a book called The Accidental Feminist.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about how the feminist movement has impacted Christian women maybe more than we realize. Can you explain a little bit ways that you see that and how you think this might relate to abortion and pro-life ministry?
I mean, I think the most obvious way that the feminist movement has impacted our understanding of life is the abortion movement, in that we've created, so one of the primary the arguments for the abortion movement for feminists is it allows women to have sex like a man. A man can have sex however he wants, and he doesn't have to worry about getting pregnant in the same way that a woman does. And so what birth control through contraception, through the pill did, and through abortion, allowed women to have the autonomy that they felt like men had. And this is a really unfortunate aspect of it, because what it didn't do is call men to right behavior and to actually, they're just as much a part of the child's life as the mother is. They're not physically carrying the baby. It didn't call men to a higher standard. It just lowered the standard of women to act like the baseness of men acting on their impulses. So I think often we say, well, abortion is a fruit of feminism, and it is, but I think the lowering of the standard of what we expect of people and their behavior is a really sad manifestation of that. One of the things I think it has done too is it's created this culture where women feel like they have some autonomy. I mean, I think men feel like they have autonomy over their own bodies, and it's a little bit easier for them to live like they have autonomy, but they don't, because they're created beings. Only God has authority over all things. But women, by being able to limit their ability to conceive, they feel like they can have some control over their outcomes in their life. And I think it's unfortunate, because it allows women to act like they're the captain of their own fate and they're the master of their own destiny. And I think for men and women, that is so contrary to what God says is true for both of us, for both men and women, is that we are created in God's image and we're created to bring him glory. I think one of the things the feminist movement was trying to do for women is birth is hard, and getting pregnant takes a toll on you. And I think we live in a broken world and in broken bodies. And I think because we weren't there was not a Christian influence of the reason why you're not able to do the things maybe you want to do, or you feel the full effects of the brokenness of your body, and the hardness of bringing a child into the world. I think because I've had really hard pregnancies and hard birth experiences, I understand the impulse of women to say, I don't want to do that. And I think for Christians, the answer is, of course, to be 100% pro-life, but also to provide a better narrative that the reason why you feel like you have to abort your baby, the reason you feel like you have this difficulty in your pregnancy, the reason why you feel like you have no other options is because you live in a broken world and in a broken body. And feminism just tried to remove that problem from the equation completely. And I think that Christians have a better answer in providing a more holistic perspective of that Christ has come to make all things new, and you're going to still live in broken bodies in a broken world where sometimes you get pregnant unexpectedly, and sometimes it makes your life really, really difficult. But there's a hope in Christ that he's making all things new. I think that's what the feminist movement didn't provide for women. It didn't provide them a better narrative. It just made them go to the basis of society. Yeah,
and that's such an encouragement, this kind of unique perspective we have, kind of knowing what's really going on in the world and where we're really coming from and this better narrative that we have. So when we share, when Christian women share a kind of a cultural environment and a biology and some priorities with non-Christian women, but don't share that same narrative, how can Christian women especially be voices for life and speak to non-Christian women when there's so much dissonance about the meaning of femininity?
Yeah, so one of the things that as I've gotten older and met more women who are not Christians and who don't hold to the same biblical worldview that I do, what I've often tried to find is the commonality. And so there is this dissonance. There's there's a divide between us because I'm a Christian and they're not. But one of the real things that I think is so helpful to kind of draw out the commonality of women, particularly if you're in a conversation with mothers, is that most mothers want to do right by their children. Most of them are doing things because they're making those decisions because they do love their children. And like the unbelieving moms that I know, they go about it a different way and they have a different narrative than I have. But I think finding that common ground that allows you to understand them as a human and understand them and understand how common grace has impacted them and allowed them to do things right by their children, allows you to then speak to that better narrative that the gospel provides for people. And I think sometimes we've gone about it with this, it's us versus them. Excuse me. And there is a sharp divide. Christ completely divides light from darkness, but the shared humanity allows us to speak to non-Christian women as fellow humans, as fellow mothers, and to say, you love your children, I love my children, like you want what's best for them, I want what's best for them. And because of Christ's transforming work in my life and the Bible, I believe the Bible is true. This is the better narrative. This is the better story. And sometimes people are going to completely 100% reject it. But I think when you come at it from a place of sameness first, and then speak to because what's going to happen are these things are going to come up where there's struggles there. I don't understand why this is hard, or I don't understand why I can't do this. And all these different things that would come up in a conversation with women are going to be able to come out and come to the surface if you come at them with a shared humanity and shared desire as a mother. And I think sometimes this happens with the working mom versus non-working mom conversation where like the mom who doesn't work out, every mom's working, but the mom who does, work primarily inside the home and a mom who does work primarily outside the home, we view them as so polar opposites and that they're not coming from the same playing field at all, but they absolutely are. They gave birth or they adopted. And so coming at it and recognizing that woman over there on the playground who doesn't love Jesus probably loves her children a whole lot. And the reason why she loves her children a whole lot is because God created her in his image. And the way she's imaging him is by being a mother. And she might be doing it in a totally pagan way, but to get at that is allows for the conversation to move forward but let me tell you a better way. Let me tell you a way that's not doing it all in your own strength. Let me tell you a way that when you feel like you have failed as a mother, like I do, I have an advocate. I have a hope, the hope of the gospel that Christ has transformed me, and I can come to the throne of grace again and again and again in a way that the non-Christian mom cannot. So I always just try to come at it from a common angle before I come at it from the sense that we're totally different. Because we are. I mean, at the end of the day, we're totally different. But at the end of the day, we're also not. So,
yeah, praise God. What an encouragement and a great reminder to us of our shared dignity being made in the image of God with all those he's created and continues to sustain. And yet this hope that we have that we can compel people in a winsome way into this new creation. Courtney, thank you so much for being with us. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.